When you ask someone to think about a giant monster, oftentimes they think of Godzilla. A 50 to 300 meter radioactive monster with dorsal spines that shoots atomic beams from its mouth, Godzilla, known as Gojira in Japan, first stomped onto the big screen on November 3rd, 1954. Since then, it has skyrocketed in popularity to the point that Tokyo even named Godzilla as its official tourism ambassador and a Japanese citizen. Over almost 70 years and through a total of 37 films as of December 2023, Godzilla has taken on many forms, including a hero of children, a mutated dinosaur and iguana, an avatar for spirits, an ancient force of nature, and even a giant sentient plant. The most famous depictions of the kaiju, however, are those in which the creature is a product of the atomic age. In the original 1954 film, Gojira, Godzilla is an ancient creature that was awoken and irradiated by a hydrogen bomb, leading it to leave its deep ocean habitat and lay waste to Tokyo before being killed by a scientist, Dr. Serizawa's oxygen destroyer. In this film, and many subsequent films for that matter, Gojira's design is heavily inspired by the aftermath of the atomic bomb. Its head shape was originally proposed to look like a mushroom cloud, and its skin is designed to look like the keloid scars found on the victims of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings in 1945. With these bombings still fresh in the minds of the Japanese people, the film released only 9 years later, and the bombs still having drastic effects on the country, the Lucky Dragon No. 5 incident in March 1954, the film hit close to home in Japan and provided a deep post-war atomic age commentary. However, many simply see Godzilla as a product of nuclear disaster and do not glance deeper into the monster and the series' deeper inspirations. Godzilla, despite being designed primarily as a metaphor for the atomic bomb, has deep connections in traditional Japanese folklore of kami and yokai alongside the many other kaiju of the franchise. Before getting into Godzilla, the mystical beings of Japanese folklore must be addressed. Typically, there are two different beings, yokai and kami. Kami are the deities of Japanese legends. The easiest comparison is to the pantheon of Greek and Roman gods that exist for various purposes. The most famous Japanese gods are perhaps Izanami and Izanagi, divine siblings that created the islands of Japan and many other gods as well. Yokai, simply meaning strange apparition, come in various shapes and sizes in Japanese folklore. There are good yokai, bad yokai, and ones that look like dragons, some that look like bipedal turtle monsters known as kappa, and others that look like normal creatures like giant spiders and catfish. Yokai can be kami if worshipped, but not all kami are yokai. In comparison, we have kaiju, what Godzilla and the other monsters of the franchise are referred to as. Kaiju means strange beast, similar to yokai meaning strange apparition. Both use the base kai, meaning strange. The difference between the two is that, while yokai can encompass a wide variety of mythological beings such as serpents or evil spirits, not what the West refers to as ghosts, those are yurei, the word kaiju is often used to describe giant fictional city-destroying creatures such as Godzilla, or Toho and Legendary's renditions of Kong. Knowing the difference between these three terms, a full analysis of Godzilla's mythological roots can begin. First things first, the etymology of Gojira versus Godzilla. Gojira is a portmanteau of the Japanese words for gorilla and whale. Though it is not officially explained by Toho, this is likely in reference to Gojira as being a mix of a terrestrial and aquatic creature with the physical strength of a gorilla and the swimming skills of a whale. The mixing of animals is not something new to mythical Japanese beasts like the Ushioni, a demonic mix of an ox and a spider. In contrast, Godzilla, while sounding grandiose and meaningful to the kaiju's power, is simply Toho's anglicized version of Gojira based on phonetics. Gojira is pronounced as Gojira in Japanese. There's no real reference to Godzilla being a godlike creature in its name, or any direct connections to any kami for the most part, but there are plenty of connections to different yokai and a single special case where Godzilla is a god. Like many other civilizations, the Japanese people have used mystical creatures and beings to explain events they did not understand. For example, for many years it was believed that catfish were the cause of earthquakes because they would act strangely shortly before they occurred. After a devastating earthquake on November 11, 1855 that killed 14,000 people and destroyed 7,000 to 10,000 buildings in Edo through tremors and fires, newspapers were flooded with depictions of a giant catfish known as onamazu. Onamazu is typically depicted as completely black, with a mouth full of sharp teeth and large round eyes with small black pupils. In one instance, the burning and chaotic Edo is even superimposed over the yokai. There's also a legend regarding Onamazu where it is subdued by the sword god of thunder, Takamikazuchi no Mikoto, and using a kanameishi or spirit rock to stop its rampaging. In this yokai, there are several parallels to be drawn between itself and Godzilla from 1954. Both are giant, black-skinned, sharp-toothed creatures with large, small-pupiled black eyes that cause destruction throughout Tokyo through tremors and fires before being defeated. The differences here are that tremors were caused by Godzilla's footsteps and direct rampaging, widespread widespread fires caused by said rampaging but also through atomic breath, and Dr. Serizawa taking the place of Takemi Kazuchi using the oxygen destroyer rather than a Kaname Ishi. These connections can be taken back even further to the legend of the eight-headed serpent Yamato no Orochi being defeated by the storm god Susanoo using the legendary katana Kusanagi. Godzilla also has several connections with another yokai known as the Honengyo. This yokai is depicted as a large, scaly, amphibious, spiky-backed, dinosaur-like fish, and the newspaper it was shown in described it as an explanation for lightning. Side by side, this is not unlike how everyone's favorite irradiated lizard appears and brings storms with it in the 1954 film as described in the official novelization by Koyama Shigeru, the writer for the treatment of the first two Godzilla films in 1954 and 1955. The physical similarities are even more striking when comparing the Honengyo to the storyboards for the 1954 Gojira film in which the kaiju is depicted with the same tail and in the same traditional style as other depictions of yokai, and much closer to the Honengyo than the official 1954 suit. The styling of this art also contributes to the filmmaker's internal connections to legends when creating the beast. There's one depiction, however, in which Godzilla is more than a kaiju. In the 2001 film Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, Godzilla is known as the Hakaishin, resurrected by the restless souls of those who died in the Pacific conflict. While there is no specific Hakaishin in Japanese mythology, the creation of the kaiju is connected to traditional Japanese mythos regarding the afterlife. Yurei, as mentioned previously, are the Japanese equivalent of what the West refers to as ghosts or evil spirits. Yurei are restless spirits that have returned to the physical world to finish a task after dying a violent death or dying with extreme emotions. The people the Japanese committed atrocities towards and who died fighting for their country surely would have strong emotions and have suffered many violent deaths, possibly wishing for revenge and, as stated in the film, wanting to be remembered. Additionally, there are many more kami kaiju with direct ties to Japanese legends besides Godzilla as well. In Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, there are three other kami kaiju that appear alongside Godzilla, known as Yamato Seiju, Japan's sacred beasts and guardian monsters. These are Baragon, god of the earth, Mothra, god of the sea, and King Ghidorah, god of the sky. While there is no god of the earth or specific god of the sky in Japanese mythology, there is a god of the sea and god of the heavens. The Japanese god of the sea, Ryujin, is a dragon representing the perils and bounties of the sea. Because of its connection to fishing and Japan being an island nation, Ryujin is an important figure in Japanese mythology and like a protector of the islands. In other words, Ryujin, god of the sea, is also a guardian monster like Mothra, another god of the sea. Mothra also has similarities to the yokai Shinshu. Shinshu, translating insect god, is a giant silkworm moth that posed no harm to humans and would eat demons and evil spirits. Through this depiction, three direct connections to Mothra can be made. The first is physical in that Shinshu and Mothra are both giant silkworm moths, evidenced by patterns and fuzziness. The second is that they pose no harm to humans, Shinshu only eats evil spirits and Mothra being a guardian monster in GMK. The third connection is that Shinshu would eat evil spirits while Mothra worked to destroy the evil spirits possessing the 2001 Godzilla. With such a strong connection between the two, it is highly likely that the original inspiration for Mothra came from legends of Shinshu and manifested completely in GMK. Another kaiju that has deep roots in Japanese mythology is Ghidorah. Ghidorah, the three-headed dragon, has several connections with the mythical beast Yamato no Orochi, the giant eight-forked serpent. The most obvious connection between the two is having multiple serpentine and dragon-like heads and tails. Additionally, these multiple heads have visual similarities as well. In the Showa-era films, Ghidorah was depicted with heads similar to traditional Japanese dragons and serpents like Tatsu, Ryujin, and Yamato no Orochi, with a serpentine head, fur or hair behind horns, and spikes continuing down the back. Another connection is that they both have only two appendages or legs. Further connections between the two kaiju require a recounting of the original Japanese legend. In Kojiki, the story of Yamato no Orochi is as follows. The god Susanoo no Mikoto, while banished from heaven, came across an elderly couple who had 8 daughters. However, only one was left as each previous year Yamato no Orochi came and ate one of the others in the time nearest for their last to be devoured. Sympathizing for the old couple, Susanoo decided to help first by transforming their daughter into a comb and placing her in his hair to hide her from the serpent. Next, he set out vats of sake, which Yamato no Orochi got drunk on, causing it to fall asleep. This allowed him to cut it to pieces, starting with the heads, killing it, and ending the cycle of death. One specific instance of Ghidorah appearing in Godzilla films calls back to this legend. In GMK, it is stated that Ghidorah was previously killed by a man and put into a 10,000-year sleep, of which only 2,000 have passed. The first connection is through the monster's death at the hands of a man, whether human or god is unknown. The second connection is that Ghidorah's death 2,000 years before 2001 coincides with the time the story can be perceived to have taken place if it were true. Kojiki was written in 712 CE, so the story must take place sometime before then. From the existence of sake, which was introduced to Japan from China sometime around 200 BCE, it can be concluded that Yamato no Orochi would have been killed between 1289 to 2201 years ago. This puts the death of Ghidorah at the beginning of the Common Era well within the time Yamato no Orochi was also killed, providing a distinct connection between the two. It could just have easily been said that Ghidorah was a 1,000-year-old or millennia-old dragon, but the filmmakers chose 2,000 years specifically, likely to connect the kaiju with their country's legends. More connections between Ghidorah and the Yamato no Orochi legend are in 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. In the film, Ghidorah is lured into a trap by the artificial call of a stronger titan, similar to how Yamato no Orochi is lured into a trap by strong sake. Ghidorah is also killed in this film by Godzilla severing and destroying each of its heads one by one in the same way Susanoo no Mikoto cut off each of Yamato no Orochi's heads one by one before dicing it apart. In fact, Godzilla has killed Ghidorah in this way multiple times before this, in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah and in Godzilla Final Wars, when he fights an alternate quadrupedal version of King Ghidorah called Kaiser Ghidorah. Additionally, there are other references to Yamato no Orochi throughout the Godzilla franchise that correspond to the legendary beast directly as well. The two most notable mentions are actually in American works. Once again, in Godzilla King of the Monsters, there is a titan contained within Mount Fuji called Titanus Yamato no Orochi. In the comic book Godzilla Rage Across Time, Godzilla fights the actual Yamato no Orochi in 1274 CE Japan, killing it by blasting its heads with atomic breath. Though Godzilla and Ghidorah are the two kaiju with the most extensive roots in Japanese mythology, there are several other kaiju that have similarly deep-seated roots. King Caesar is heavily inspired by and in direct reference to the Shiza dogs that decorate the island of Okinawa. Introduced to Japan from China sometime between the Nara and Heian eras, these guardian dogs appear in pairs throughout the island as protectors from evil spirits and fires. The most popular legends surrounding them describe the origin of the Ganamui Woods, a large bush surrounded by trees near the Naha-Ohashi Bridge. At the village of Madambashi, there existed a dragon that would come from the sea and terrorize the village, eating its people and destroying their homes. However, one night, the village priestess had a dream that the king must present his Shiza figure necklace to the dragon on the beach to stop it. Coincidentally, when the king of Okinawa visited the village, the dragon did as well. Remembering the priestess's words that were conveyed to him previously, the king went to the beach and held his Shiza necklace up to the dragon. The figure then let out a great roar and shook the village, including the dragon, before a large boulder fell from the sky and crushed the dragon's tail, pinning it down until its eventual death where plants and trees grew over its body. King Caesar has several connections to Shiza, both in appearance and backstory. King Caesar and Shiza share the most similarities in their heads. King Caesar takes from the statues their long fangs, static smiles, furrowed brows, long ears, and curly manes. The traditional curled fur also continues down the body and on the tail, just like the statues as well. In its debut film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, King Caesar's origin story is recounted. King Caesar is the guardian deity of the Azumi monarchs of Okinawa. When mainlanders arrived there and tried to destroy the house of Azumi, King Caesar, gleaming like copper, appeared and saved them. In fact, he is called Okinawa no Mamorigami, or the guardian deity of Okinawa. In this origin story, there are two connections to the mythology surrounding Shiza statues. The first is that King Caesar is the guardian of Okinawa in the same way the Shiza dogs are guardians of buildings around the islands. The second connection is that King Caesar is described shining like copper, almost like Shiza statues that were made of stone but would have been polished to shine like metal. The fact that this is a deity of the Azumi people, which are people of Kagoshima, is unable to be connected to Okinawa. Okinawa was part of the independent Ryukyu kingdom and not Japan until 1606. However, one can see through name, origin, and appearance that King Caesar has deep-rooted connections with the guardian Shiza of Okinawa. Through Godzilla and Ghidorah especially, one can see a repetition of themes in the stories of the film franchise stemming from the legends the yokai are connected to appear in. Being Godzilla's motif with giant monsters in conflict with each other and humanity, there is a repeated theme of conquest over destructive monsters. Humanity fights against Godzilla and other kaiju, actually completely prevailing over Godzilla 6 times, much in the same way Susanoo no Mikoto subdued Yamato no Orochi and Takamikazuchi no Mikoto subdued Onamazu. Another repeated theme is fantastical beings as causes of events and destruction. Godzilla causes storms in the 1954 film and book, kaiju like Anguirus and Baragon cause earthquakes, and in the legendary films, Ghidorah creates hurricanes wherever it flies. This is much in the same way various yokai are explanations for natural disasters and destruction. Namazu and Onamazu were blamed for earthquakes, Honengyo were an explanation for lightning, and Ryujin was believed to bring destruction or prosperity at sea. Additionally, GMK alone portrays gods combating, such as Izanagi killing Kagutsuchi and Susanoo no Mikoto being banished from heaven, and gods quelling evil spirits such as Shinshu. While one could argue that these may not be direct references and connections, it does not refute the fact that the connections exist. The permeation of the fantastical creatures throughout Japanese society would place them in the back of the creators' minds. It is similar to how beings like Bigfoot, zombies, and aliens have permeated Western society and influenced media all the time. By recognizing that these connections and roots exist, the meaning of these kaiju and the media they appear in becomes much deeper and richer. The Godzilla franchise is already a worldwide phenomenon closely associated with Japan and Japanese culture, and with recognizable roots in ancient myths and folklore, this only becomes more apparent. Even though Godzilla and other kaiju as well may be directly tied to things like nuclear disasters, they still have many connections and roots in Japanese folklore and history in the ways that they are physically presented and the mythos surrounding the beasts themselves.